Shabbat Shalom. So this is indeed our last Shabbat of 2023. And even though this isn't our new year, it is the new year that we're embedded in. You know, it's the new year all around us. And it gives us another opportunity. I often think about this moment as a chance to revisit what our wishes and pledges were for 5784 back in September. Where were we as we were contemplating the state of our souls at that new year? And what did we understand to be our work on ourselves and in the world? What were our deepest hopes for our world and for ourselves? Teshuvah is actually meant to be a daily process. We actually have prayers of Teshuvah in our daily Amidah every single day. And so this moment when all the people around us are talking about resolutions and looking back at the year and looking ahead at the year is a really good opportunity to look again inward and outward and consider, how are we living? Are we living up to our promises to ourselves, to our pledges, to the people we love, to our sense of our truest and highest way of being? And how is our world? I'll be speaking later in the service about our world. And it's going to be heavy. I'll just tell you that right now. But for now, as we enter into Kabbalat Shabbat, perhaps we can also reflect on all that was good in this year that passed. All the blessings that have been available to us. All the reasons we have for gratitude. Perhaps we can consider all of the beauty that's possible in the year to come. Kabbalat Shabbat is about that. It is about goodness and beauty and gratitude and praise, and about justice. It's about us and the world, but it's attempting to get us into a mode of being that is different than the ordinary week. And this kind of introspection and reflection is that. And so let us make our way into this last Shabbat of 2023 in a place that has some kind of combination of gratitude and praise and also reflection and contemplation. And we'll begin on page 130 with Lechu Neranana. Come, let us sing out together.
Let's try it over here. Come, let us praise Adonai. ספרו בגויים בבודו, וכל העמים נפלאותיו, כי גדול אדוני ומהולל מאוד, נורא הוא על כל אלוהים, איי איי איי, כי כל אלוהי עמים אלילים, ואדוני שמיים עשה, הוד והדי לפניו, עוז ותפארת במקדשו, ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, ירם הים ומלואו, יעלו שדי וכל אשר בו, אז ירננו כל עשיי, כי כל אדוני כי בא לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק ועמים באמונתו, ילדי די 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 ילדי די ילדי די ילדי די 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 ילדי די 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 Bottom of 132. Adonai malach tagel haaretz, yismechu yim rabim, anan barafel seviva, tzedek umishpat nichon kiso, oh, 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 avi Adonai, sineu ra, shomer nafshot chasidav, miyad v'shayim yatzilem, oh, 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 zaru al tzaddik, uyishvei lev simcha, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, ve'hodu l'zecher kodsho. 133. V'zmor shiru l'Adonai, shir chadash, ki niflaot asa, Hoshia lo yemino zroa kodsho dia, l'Adonai Yeshuato, lein mehagoyim gilad zikato, zachor chasto v'emunato, Levit Yisrael ra'u kol asei haaretz, et Yeshuat Eloheinu hariu l'Adonai kol haaretz, pitzchu v'rannenu v'zameru zamru l'Adonai bechinor v'kol zemira, v'chatzotzrot v'kol shofar, hariu lifnei hamelech Adonai, yiram hayam u'mela'o, tvel v'yoshvei ba, ve'harot yimcha u'chav, yachad charim v'ranenu lifnei Adonai kiva, lishpot haaretz, yishpot tevel v'tzedek, ve'amim v'bnei sharim, yailai, 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 but page 137. Adonai le'amo yite, Adonai yivarech et amo, Adonai oz le'amo yite, Adonai yivarech et amo. Ay, 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 da, 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 shalom. time. Let me hear those harmonies. May Adonai grant strength to God's people, and may Adonai bestow on God's people shalom, peace. As we prepare to welcome the Sabbath bride, welcome in this last Shabbat bride coming in for the year on page 138. Let's take a moment just to breathe. Feel your feet on the ground, maybe wiggle your toes a little bit. Feel your bottom in the chair. Feel yourself supported. Feel the air in your lungs. Take one more deep breath. Verse 1. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad Hishmianu el hameyuchad Adonai echad u'shmo echad Shemu tiferet v'litchila Lecha dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nikah. Verse 2. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha Ki mekor ha-beracha Merosh mikerem nesucha Zov ma'aseh b'machshava techila Lecha dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat. Verse 4. Hitnareri me'afar kumi Liv shebitei tifar techami Ayad ben Yishai v'talach mikova el nafshi ge'ala Lecha dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela Lecha dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela Lecha dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 5. Hitoreri, kiva ore kumiori, uri, shirda beri kevor Adonai, alayim nigla lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela, lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 9. Boi v'shalom ateret bala gam b'simcha u'bzola toch emunei am segula boi chala Lecha dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela Lecha dodi please remain standing as we turn to page 144 for Chatzi Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabba, v'amad yivrach yoteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, bagala bagala u'v'zman kariv v'meru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevarach, le'alam olol me'amaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudsha v'richu le'ela min kol bechata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'meru, amen. Page 146. Barechu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed. Please be seated. Page 148. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uben laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch atah Adonai, Amari v'aravim. Page 150. Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha avta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, Otanu limadeta, Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shachbenu, uvkumenu nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, uv'mitzvotecha leolam va'ed, ki hem chayenu, ve'orech yameinu, uvahem neke yomam v'layla, neke yomam v'layla, ve'ahavatcha tasir, mimenu le'olamim, v'bruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha. 154. Ve'hayu
הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו עשיתם את כל מצוותיי, הייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
158.
מי כמוך, באלים אדוני, מי כמוך, נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות, חוסן פלא, מלכותך רובנך, בוקי הים, לפני משה ומרים, זה ענו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Page 160, our prayer for protection. This is such a time to be asking for protection for ourselves and for every vulnerable person, every person without shelter, every person in danger, every person who lacks what they need. And we spread our Sukkot Shalom, our Sukkah of peace, broad and wide to cover every head that needs protection. We'll go from Hashkivenu to Misheberach, in which each of us can pray and say out loud the names of people, specific people we're praying for healing. We'll pause in the middle of the prayer and I'll receive the names that you are wishing to say, and then we'll pray the second part of the prayer together.
160.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'amidenu shomreinu l'chaim, ufros aleinu sukkot shelomecha v'takenenu b'tzah tova milfanecha v'hoshinu l'man shemecha v'hagin ba'dinu v'asir me'aleinu oyev dever v'cherev v'ra'av v'yagon v'archek mimenu avon Uvoinu l'chaim u'l'shalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Me'ata ve'ad olam. Baruch atah Adonai, aporei sukat shalom, aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Yerushalayim.
Page 371.
Mi sheberach avoteinu mekor habracha leimoteinu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
We pray for healing for the people we name now. We pray together.
Mi sheberach imoteinu mekor habracha leavoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal
We turn to page 162 for Vishamru. After Vishamru, we'll continue with Silent Amidah on the pages following.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotav berit olam beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et haaretz uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash.
hear the call to action already.
Better that happen now than in like 5 minutes. Maybe everyone turn off your devices. That's a good reminder for everybody. At the beginning of our Parsha this week, we are told that we have reached the end of our patriarch Jacob's life. Calling his son Joseph to him as he prepares to die, Jacob repeats the promise made to him by God. I will assign this land to your offspring to come for an everlasting possession. It's the same promise that was made to his father and grandfather before him. To your offspring I give this land, Abraham was told, and to your descendants I give this land, he was told again. And to Isaac, I will assign all these lands to you and to your heirs. I will assign to your heirs all these lands. Even Jacob himself already heard these words from God when he dreamt of the angels ascending and descending the ladder. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. And then again, later, the promise, the land that I assigned to Abraham and Isaac, I assign to you, and to your offspring to come will I assign the land. This promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, reiterated throughout the rest of the Torah as the basis for destination for the exodus from Egypt, for the journey through the wilderness, becomes the goal, the covenant, and the home of our people. For the last 12 weeks, we American Jews have lived in a toxic binary between those who would interpret these verses literally and maximally, insisting that they are proof that the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea belongs only to Jews, and those who would deny the verse's formative and historic role for the Jewish people, insisting that none of the promised land belongs to Jews, and rather all of it belongs only to Palestinians. Our community includes people who are calling for a ceasefire genuinely out of a desire to end this war, to save as many Palestinian and Israeli lives as possible. People who remain committed to a Jewish and democratic Israel living side by side with a free and self-governing Palestinian state. I share this desire to save lives, but I struggle with the word ceasefire because of how it has been used as a cudgel to divide our community. On one side of the toxic binary, those who do not believe that the Jewish people have a right to live on the land were the first and loudest voices for a ceasefire. Some made the call for ceasefire immediately after October 7th, saying that Israel had no right to respond to the worst pogrom since the Holocaust. Some who were calling for a ceasefire claimed that the sadistic, unbelievably brutal atrocities against Jews on October 7th were a legitimate form of anti-colonial uprising, and even celebrated them. Starting just 3 days after October 7th, some falsely accused Israel of genocide when Israelis hadn't even identified and buried all of their mutilated and burned dead. Some who called for ceasefire saw Israel's defense of itself and its people as inherently unjustified and opposed all military action from the start. These early calls for a one-sided ceasefire made the word ceasefire an anti-Israel slogan when it really should be a call for peace. On the other side of the toxic binary, those who interpret the biblical blessings of the Promised Land as proof of the Jewish people's right to all of the land called for flattening Gaza, for mowing the lawn, for damage over accuracy. Here and in Israel, they closed their eyes and looked away while the IDF used massive US-supplied bombs to kill 20,000 people. Israeli television hosts callously dismissed Palestinian children as, quote, future terrorists. Jewish supremacist settlers went on rampages through the West Bank, killing Palestinians and stealing their land. Members of Netanyahu's government planned for the reoccupation of Gaza by Israel and for the removal of Gazans to other countries as refugees. They said and still say that they intend to fight this war long into the future. Now we are 12 weeks into the war. A massive humanitarian catastrophe is long underway. 1.9 million people are homeless, starving, without enough clean water to drink, and without medical care or adequate medical care. Disease outbreak is looming. 54,000 Gazans are injured, the majority of whom are children and women. Israel has continued to drop massive bombs, even this evening, on the very places where Palestinians were told to flee to. Meanwhile, Yoav Zitun reported in Yediot Achronot on Tuesday that, quote, virtually every day, IDF soldiers discover Hamas militants inside UNRWA. UNRWA is United Nations Relief Works Agency, shelters, with their weapons, near children. The IDF sets up snipers. Sometimes the terrorists shoot civilians who try to escape. It has to stop. Meanwhile, more than 100 Israelis are still believed to be alive and held hostage by Hamas. Redeeming the captives has to be Israel's first priority. It is time for a negotiated end to this war. It is time for supporters of Israel, for lovers of Israel, for those of us who know that both Jews and Palestinians have a past and a future in the Promised Land, to call upon the Israeli government and Hamas and the United States and the Arab nations to negotiate an end to this war. I have spoken about the more than 2,000-year history of anti-Semitism that warps the world's view of Israel and Jews, that debases the left's morality and discredits the United Nations and many of the world's leaders. I have spoken about how Israeli so-called colonists are themselves refugees from countries around the world which expelled them or tried to annihilate them. I have spoken about Hamas's eliminationist agenda, which must be rejected. I have spoken about Israel's right and responsibility to pursue Hamas and defeat it. All of these things are true, and it is still time for an end to this war. This does not mean that Israel has to give up its goal to dismantle Hamas. On Thursday, Major General Amos Yadlin, the former director of the IDF's Military Intelligence Directorate, wrote that after the troops are withdrawn, the objective to defeat Hamas will, quote, continue outside of Gaza with the goal of targeting Hamas's leaders and its sources of funding and arms. Rabbi Jill Jacobs wrote in JTA last week as she called for a negotiated end to the war. Perhaps this war can be won in the sense that Hamas's top leaders may eventually be killed, but can the IDF really root out every last fighter and every last rifle and rocket and every last tunnel? And if so, at what cost? She continued, would it be a victory to bring about the deaths of tens of thousands more Palestinian civilians, whether from bombs, disease, starvation, or exposure, to sacrifice even more Israeli soldiers on what Israeli poet Natan Alterman called, quote, the silver platter, for a war that is increasingly unlikely to bring greater security to Israel? She continued, would it be a victory to sacrifice Israel's relations with the United States, which has increasingly made clear its position that Israel must end the intense phase of the war soon? Would it be a victory to turn Israel into a pariah state? We must remember that there are messianic Jewish supremacists guiding this government, those who read the Torah's promises to Jacob's descendants as license to displace, dominate, and kill Palestinians. Bezalel Smotrich, in a work he wrote called Israel's Decisive Plan, calls for a new readiness in Israeli society to win once and for all, quote, a victory founded on the understanding that there is no room in the land of Israel for two conflicting national movements, unquote. Major General Yadlin, the former director of Israel's Military Intelligence Directorate, said this week that replacing Netanyahu's government, quote, is not a matter of politics. This is an existential need. Rabbi Jill Jacobs says, those who call themselves pro-Israel need to get serious about which Israel they support. Is it this extremist government driven by the settler agenda with a bleak future, forever living by the sword? Or is it a democratic Israel living within internationally recognized borders as a full member of the international community? The long-term security of Israel, victory in its truest and deepest sense, will come about only through an Israel that, with stable borders, alongside a Palestinian state, and with normalized relations with neighboring Arab and Muslim countries. In a deep cry of mourning, Michael Svard wrote in Haaretz on Tuesday, "The question gives us no rest. It pounds on our temples and it rages in our bellies. Who will we be after the war? And really, what will be the image of a society that in its endless and axiomatic rightness killed tens of thousands, most of them children, women, and the elderly? Indeed, they were killed in the aftermath of a horrifying and unforgivable crime. And yet, my grandmother," he continued, "who survived the Holocaust after escaping with her mother and sisters from the actions in the Warsaw Ghetto and hid until the end of the war in attics and cellars, wrote in her memoirs that the greatest challenge in the face of the extreme inhumanity was to maintain humanity." Svard asks, what will our deeds in recent weeks etch into our souls? The destruction of cities, towns, villages, and refugee camps, the total demolition of residential neighborhoods and civilian infrastructure, the erasure of families, and leaving hundreds, if not thousands, of children orphaned. How many tons of coldness and indifference have settled inside us in order for us to turn high-rise buildings into dust, promenades and plazas into ruins, and 1.5 million people into displaced people who have nothing? Is there a way back from the hardness we have decreed on our hearts in the face of hundreds of thousands of people who, because of our war, are fighting like animals for pieces of food, a safe place where their children can lay down their heads, medicine, clean water, and dignity? And what will become of a society whose media outlets, which provide it with information about its deeds, have refrained for over 10 weeks from bringing even a single interview, a single one, with a resident of Gaza to tell what's happening to them, who censor the pictures of the dead children and the weeping mothers, the children that we killed and the mothers whose bereavement we caused? The Israeli TV channels are shaping our collective perceptions not only by means of what they show, but also, and perhaps mainly, by means of what they're hiding from us. On Wednesday night, Israel's Channel 13 reported that the Israeli government, with U.S. support, offered Hamas a deal for the exchange of hostages and prisoners, which would include the withdrawal of Israeli forces from populated areas in Gaza and the entry of large quantities of medical supplies. According to the report, Hamas rejected the deal. Let us all add our voices in urgent support of this effort and others that would bring the hostages home, end the humanitarian crisis, and bring us to the end of this war now. Sometimes people forget that the end to this war can only happen if both sides agree, Hamas as well as Israel. All of those who are calling for ceasefire should direct their calls equally to Hamas and to Israel to demand that both come to the table to negotiate release of hostages and the end of this war. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert, who was originally in the Likud party, wrote today in Haaretz, "The time has come for Israel to express its readiness to end the fighting." Yes, he said, end the fighting. Not a pause and not a temporary cessation of 2, 3, or 4 days, he continued, an end to the hostility, period. At that time, Israel will need to bring back the hostages, those who are alive and those who are dead. If we wait, he said, it won't be long before the only ones we can bring back will be the dead, because there won't be any living ones. A cessation of hostilities must be conditioned on the release of all the hostages, every last one of them, he said. Some people who are calling for ceasefire mean a unilateral end of fighting by Israel without the release of hostages. Let me be clear, I do not support that. But many others who are calling for a ceasefire are calling for what Ehud Olmert just called for, a bilateral, negotiated end to the war with the release of all the hostages. This is what I am calling for too. In our parasha, just after Jacob tells Joseph of God's promise of the land, he blesses Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, with these words: "The God in whose ways my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd from my birth to this day, may the angel who has protected me from all harm bless these lads." The Zohar comments that the blessing of children, even though the parent who offers it sees it as complete, does not give the child full pleasure until it also includes his or her or their own children, until it is fulfilled in the next generation. As Rabbi Art Green comments, how especially true is this in our day, when we keep asking ourselves, what sort of world is it that we are leaving for the next generations? It is for them we need to ask, but also create blessing. We hope that the blessings we give to Yud He Vav He, more through our deeds than through our words, will help to create a world of blessing for those who come after us. Please, let us begin 2024 with an agreement to release all the hostages and end this war. Shabbat Shalom.
We turn to page 586 for Elena.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Middle of page 590.
כי המלכות שלך היא ולעולמי עד תמלוך בכבוד, ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אוי ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
You may be seated. Now I'm going to see if I'm going to put our trustees on the spot and see if anybody wants to come and give greetings. You don't have to. I've got the language right here. I didn't ask you ahead of time. It's my fault. Anybody want to do that? Okay, I'll just do it. It's fine. Welcome to CBE. Here at CBE, we have members who themselves or their families come from all around the world, including Argentina, Brazil, Chile, China, Colombia, Egypt, Ethiopia, Ghana, India, Iran, Iraq, Israel, Jamaica, Japan, Kenya, Korea, Mexico, Morocco, the Philippines, South Africa, Syria, Thailand, Uruguay, Vietnam, and many more places closer to Brooklyn, like Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, Montana, Nebraska, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Ontario, Quebec, Saskatchewan, Texas, and even Florida. And no matter where we're from, what we look like, or what we thought we came here to do today, we are here to do something real together. We are in this moment living the Judaism of our time. We do not have one kind of look. We do not have one kind of name. We come from every race and myriad cultures. You may meet a white Ashkenazi or Sephardi Jew, a black Jew, an Asian Jew, a Latino Jew, an Arab Jew, and no matter what we look like, we might know a lot about Judaism or a little. We also include a lot of people who aren't Jewish. The only thing you can assume, the only thing you should assume, is that every single person you meet at CBE belongs here exactly as much as you do. I thank us for leading services. And I thank Mark Flaxers, who's supporting us in person, and Stas Sholshansky, who's providing audio and online support. And I don't have any announcements, but you can always check the website, and I wish everyone a sweet and happy New Year, secular New Year. And we come now to the end of our service. One second. We always end by thinking about the people we love who aren't here anymore. And so if you're someone who is in a period of mourning, if you're in the first week since the death of a loved one, if this is Shiva for you, I invite you to rise and tell us who you're remembering. And those who are in Shloshim in the first 30 days since the death.
My mother, Irene Berkowitz.
And those in the first year in Shana. And those who are here observing a yard site, the anniversary of a death. We all rise in company with the mourners who are among us as we remember these recent losses in our congregational community. Stephen Johnson, brother-in-law of Rob Mandelbaum and uncle of Isaac and Hugo. Artis Vaughn, mother of Karen Vaughn. Raina Frank Goodman, mother of Rabbi Stephen Wise Goodman and mother-in-law of Rabbi Linda Henry Goodman. Keith Abrams, father of Mark Abrams, father-in-law of Virginia Abrams and grandfather of Henry and Edie. Rabbi David Ellenson. Barry Hardy, brother of Jacqueline Klein. And these yard sites, Norman Alexander, Abraham Arkawi, Joseph Bacharach, Henrietta Block, Arthur Block, Rodolfo Blumenkrantz, Erwin Charney, Bessie Cohen, Elsie Diamond, Annie Engel, Paul Efros, Irene Epstein, Evangeline Fernandez, Emil Feuerstein, Jack Garfine, Isaac Geller, Gustav Gerner, Pavel Gersten, Samuel Edward Goldberg, Elias Goldstein, Benjamin Goldstein, Leonard Golluber, Edward Goodman, Louis Grossman, David Grossman, Gail Hellenbrand, Carrie Hemmerdinger, Rachel Jaffa, Philip Joseph, Stanley Kasakov, Gertrude Kirschenbaum, Marvin Kochman, Beatrice Kushner, Joseph Lechner, Rachel Lair, Edward Leifer, Annie Leifer, Mildred Levy, Grace Lipstein, Louisa Spiro Marks, Sarah Lillian May, Simon May, Martin Minkoff, Donald Nathan, Brian Newcomb, Richard Posen, Edward Regan, Ann Roseman, Regina Leah Rosenfeld, Herbert Rosenfeld, Michael Sandler, Betty Schellenberg, Victor Schneider, Arlene Schwartz, Cecilia Schwartz, Leah Singer, Alexander Spitzer, Jim Sponsler, William Weiner, Florence Weistein, Eli Woke, Aya Yavin, Frederick Yokel. Holding them all together, we say, Zichronam Livracha. May their memories be an everlasting blessing. As we turn to the words of the Mourner's Kaddish on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma tivra chirute ve'amlich malchute. B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei rachol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uv'izman kariv ve'emru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei t'kudesha brichu. Le'ela minko birchata v'shirata. Tush birchata v'nechemata. Da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min Shemaya. Ve'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Huyaseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen. May the maker of peace make peace for all who mourn and comfort all who are bereaved. And we say together, Amen.
Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom. Salam Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Salam Shalom. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam. Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu, Od Yavo Shalom Aleinu ve'al kulam.
Shabbat Shalom. We'll meet you for Kiddush in the lobby. And Happy New Year.
Bathroom